So generally speaking, Chainlink came out of the DeFi boom, and it helped grow DeFi from a sub $100 million industry to over $200 billion by providing the critical data and other resources needed. So Chainlink kind of grew out of various mistrust issues by society and the need for oracles and smart contracts to come together and solve those trust issues in the form of DeFi. This has led to Chainlink enabling over $15 trillion in transaction value, which makes it one of the most value processing systems in the entire blockchain industry. Now there's a new component to what Chainlink does, which is basically the ability for real-world assets and next-generation DeFi applications to reinvent the global financial system, which is really crypto and blockchains and smart contracts reaching their full potential. So now what Chainlink has become is the intersection of these three trends: various societal mistrust issues, the use of oracles and smart contracts to solve those issues, and the application of that to the global financial system, allowing blockchain, smart contracts, and oracle networks to realize their full value. This is actually what Chainlink and the community behind Chainlink has been talking about and working on from the beginning. This is, for example, a diagram that has been floating around the community for years, where you gradually see the boxes within cryptocurrency and DeFi and tokenized RWA growing. But now what you've seen is tokenized RWA become larger than DeFi. And the world we're really going towards is that it's not about 1, 2, or 2.5, or 4, or 5 trillion. It's about hundreds of trillions. And the question is, what is the infrastructure and what are the systems that are going to allow that to happen? So the way that this has been getting solved so far by Chainlink is the solving of certain key problems. The first key problem was the need to process data in a consensus-driven, highly reliable way, because if you don't process data in a consensus-driven way, you get unreliable applications that can't be verified, that can't be relied on, and this is what was keeping DeFi from growing. Then you had the problem of connecting those same DeFi protocols to various important off-chain systems for automation, various computations that blockchains can't do. And then you have the problem of cross-chain connectivity. So today, Chainlink has become a system and an entire platform and a set of protocols to solve all three of these problems for DeFi and Web3 public chain smart contracts. So now Chainlink is not just about data, and it's not just about automation, and it's not just about identity, and it's not just about cross-chain. It's about how to combine all of these external systems around making a reliable smart contract in the form of Aave, in the form of GMX, in the form of these more advanced smart contracts that are still, in my opinion, at the early stages of their development. This gives rise, essentially, to the Chainlink platform and set of protocols, which goes very far beyond data and allows next-generation applications to come into existence. That's kind of the beginning of the process. The next stage of the process is really how do you get the TradFi ecosystem to properly utilize all of this infrastructure, data, computation, connectivity, in a way that allows the value from their systems to flow onto various blockchains and eventually into DeFi protocols and systems. Their first problem is very similar to the DeFi data problem that was solved initially for DeFi by Chainlink. And so it's just the inclusion of more types of data. DeFi primarily relied on market prices. TradFi needs much more data. Market prices, reference data, various valuation calculations, AUM, all kinds of different data that allow those TradFi smart contracts to function properly. The next thing that TradFi needs is cross-chain, but before cross-chain can even happen, what you really need is to feed data in. This is where Chainlink is now excelling as the most widely used provider of NAV data, various traditional market data, going on production, so live on production for real value. This is an example of how tokenized funds from Fidelity are being secured and enabled by NAV data, which is the net asset value data of those funds. This is an example of a dashboard live on production showing the proof of reserves of one of the many ETF funds that use Chainlink to prove things about them. And this is an example of a diagram about how you have critical data that can come from widely used systems like the DTCC into various networks that require that data to make more advanced TradFi applications. The next problem is actually cross-chain connectivity. So it's not only about getting the data into the blockchain and into the smart contracts, it's getting the data to move across the different blockchains by connecting the token from one chain to another chain. This is actually the next big problem in TradFi, and it's already a problem being solved by Chainlink and Web3. It's the ability to get the liquidity and the value from various chains into the chain where the asset is. But you need to solve this problem in a way where data consistently flows into the blockchain smart contracts. So this problem is also actively being solved by Chainlink and CCIP right now by doing POC pilot and soon production transactions that enable the movement of value, both in the form of payment as stablecoin and in the form of assets. In this case, a carbon credit for a trillion asset under management bank. This is a great example of what you're going to see more and more in the TradFi world. It's going to be the movement of stablecoins in a delivery versus payment transaction in return for some asset on another chain. And this is the other thing that CCIP and Chainlink is enabling. Two of the key features that enable this are really the ability to tightly couple data and token value in a single transaction, creating something called programmable token transfers, where you can actually wrap a token in instructions so that when it reaches its destination, it ends up triggering the event that it's intended for. This means that people that want to use that chain don't even need to integrate with it. They can simply use the chain through CCIP. Another key feature, especially for TradFi, is the ability to manage risk of transactions. And this is where CCIP excels with a distinct network that manages various risks. Risks around identity, risks around reliability, risks around any number of policies that you want to encode in that network. The fundamental goal of all this is to get as much value from the TradFi community, which has hundreds of trillions of dollars in value, into the blockchain ecosystem on a single set of standards that can allow them to interact with each other, but can also allow them to interact with the DeFi community, and therefore grow it to an entirely different stage of growth. That's really what our industry needs and is about at this point. The final piece of getting the TradFi community properly integrated with the blockchain, and therefore getting their value to flow onto the blockchain, is synchronizing all the blockchain activity with their systems. Because unlike Web3 startups, they have decades of systems that need to be in sync with a blockchain that they're not going to replace and they're not going to get rid of. This is where the Chainlink ecosystems work with existing standards like Swift is particularly useful. It provides the ability for all of the existing systems on that standard to eventually interact with blockchains in an efficient way, which accelerates the rate at which they get their value to go on-chain. This once again contributes to the new direction of our industry, which is not just about more cryptocurrencies, more meme coins, more artificial yield, cycling and recycling all of these things. It's actually about net new value coming in from the traditional market and coming in not in the hundreds of billions, but in the trillions. That's the next kind of stage of our industry as a whole. And personally, I believe that the real-world asset trend and the real-world asset category will relatively soon in the next few years overcome the total value of cryptocurrencies. And then our industry, by definition, by the numbers, will not be about cryptocurrencies. It'll be about blockchain technology enabling things like real-world assets. And that's what the blockchain industry will be. So this is kind of the world that I think we should all be preparing for, and that the Chainlink ecosystem is building towards by both enabling DeFi to grow and be secure and reach the kind of level of reliability and guarantees that the DeFi community needs and that the TradFi community needs, and enabling the TradFi community's value to flow onto blockchains and into the DeFi ecosystem eventually. What this will result in, if it works as intended, is CCIP becoming one of the key protocols of the internet, what we call the Internet of Contracts and the Internet of Value, because CCIP is fundamentally the data and value transport mechanism by which that data and value flows into and across all of those chains. Practically, what this should do is connect all the central bank digital currency chains, all of the various asset chains, all of the consortium chains, all of the public chains, into this single Internet of Contracts, where those transactions are relying on data, identity, and various other pieces of information to function, and they're able to function successfully across chains. Right now, we're still in a world where the Web3 world and the TradFi world is divided by a legal barrier, but that legal barrier is getting reduced. And right now, we're in a world where Chainlink already powers the majority of DeFi and has processed trillions of dollars in transaction value, enabling that to happen. We're also in a world where Chainlink, I think, is in the lead at becoming the standard on these dimensions of data, identity, connectivity for the TradFi market. And so once this legal barrier goes down, as it has started to go down in places like Singapore, where we are, across Asia, the Middle East, and other places, I think we'll be in an interconnected world of DeFi and TradFi doing transactions between each other, and TradFi will be the largest customer of DeFi. And DeFi will be defined and diversified by its ability to create yield and reliable markets for real-world assets. And that's the kind of world that I think we're going towards. We have a conference coming up, SmartCon, in Hong Kong in a month and a half, where we'll be discussing all of these topics with many of the people from the DeFi, TradFi, and other blockchain communities, and we'll be excited to have you folks there. Other than that, wanted to thank everybody for their attention, and just to say it's been great chatting with you, and that I'm excited to see many of you during the conference. So thank you very much, and have a great conference.